The director of the Institute of Political Studies in Moscow. Sir, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Can you help us understand what Vladimir Putin's end goal here is?
Vladimir Putin's goal, I think, liberation of Ukraine from neo-Nazi, denazification. We already mentioned many times, and we repeated it on the many international forums that Kiev repressive regime, it's not democratically, it's not rely on the political will of Ukrainian people. It use neo-Nazi group for the terror, and most of the Ukrainians hate these neo-Nazi groups, and they pray for Russia and for somebody else to liberate Ukrainian society from Nazi group and their terror. It's number one.
There are a number of points I want to pick you up on there, but I just want to understand, if Ukraine is liberated, in your words, does that mean it remains an independent state, or do you think Vladimir Putin wants it to become part of Russia?
I think Vladimir Putin will fully rely on the political will of the people in Ukraine. We prefer that after liberation, Ukrainian people will build themselves common Ukraine and common democratic government, which will be friendly to Russia, because absolute majority of people in Ukraine, they want Ukraine to be friendly both with Russia and with European Union, with the Western country as well. It's normal. They don't want to have a conflict neither with Russia nor with the Western country. But the problem is...
Now, hold on, sir. You're saying that the object of this exercise is to denazify Ukraine. You are, I'm sure, aware that the president of Ukraine is Jewish, that some of his family fled the Holocaust. What evidence do you have that Ukraine is being controlled by Nazis?
Ukraine not controlled by Nazis. Kiev repressive pro-American puppet regime used neo-Nazi as marginals for the terror against those with whom they disagree. Zelensky not Nazis. Zelensky himself afraid of Nazis very well. He's Jewish, and he knows that among the Nazis very much a lot of people with anti-Semitic...
But sir, I'm going to interrupt you again. Can you share with me any information, any evidence that you've got that the Americans are funding neo-Nazi groups, and then provide me with evidence that those neo-Nazi groups are controlling Ukraine? You haven't shared any specifics with me.
Yeah, it's a very specific fact. For example, Azov. It's a military unit which had been formed from the beginning by fascists, and even some congressmen of United States Congress published, issued special letter to the President of the United States with demand not to allow American money, which is go as help to the Ukrainian government, to go to the neo-Nazi military unit Azov. Also, you may know, every January 1st, all the biggest Ukrainian cities is occupied by neo-Nazi march with fires. It's celebration of the birthday of very well-known...
Well, hold on a minute, sir. There is, of course, a difference between a country having some people who are of the far right and those far-right people controlling the country. The Americans would also absolutely deny that they are in any way providing or cooperating with far-right groups that would try and control Ukraine. Let me also ask you about the idea that Russia is a country to lecture anyone on democracy. Every time your country has an election, people who try to observe what happens raise multiple concerns about freedom of the press, freedom of expression and electoral fraud. Why do you think Russia is in a position to suggest to Ukraine or anyone else how it's done?
I think Russia, as a transitional country, has some problem with democracy. We have probably limited political competition, but nevertheless, we have the basis of democracy. Russian power, President Vladimir Putin, he follows the political will of the majority of Russian people. And no doubt that Vladimir Putin is one of the most popular leaders in the among other European leaders.
Well, so let's take the last 24 hours as a test. Yesterday, we saw protests against this war in Russia, and we saw the Russian police moving in and arresting some people at those protests. It's one of hundreds, if not thousands, of examples I could give you where Vladimir Putin and his government and his supporters close down people's freedom of expression. I'll ask you again, why do you think Russia should be suggesting to any other country that it knows best how to run a democracy?
It's very easily. Yesterday protest and the people that have been part of them have been arrested by police is very good example exactly democracy, because same event usually happen in London, in New York, in Paris, and in other capitals of democratic country. Some of the Democrats use violence against police. Some police arrest some Democrats, and they will be free in 5 days. But it's absolutely contrary. It's absolutely impossible in Ukraine, where a repressive government, there are no possibility anti-war demonstration in Kyiv. It's impossible. No one possibility to have demonstration for the friendship with Russia, because these people will be terrorized by neo-Nazi group. They will be put to prison, not for the 5 days, but for the 5 years. They will come through the torture, and possibly some of them will be killed.
Well, so there's a couple of things to say here. First of all, if you take part in a protest in a democracy, being released after 5 days is a low bar to clear. People would mostly expect not to be taken into custody in the first place. And with reference to Ukraine, and I think you made reference to the UK, it would be absolutely normal to be able to protest against any sort of military action without the government or the authorities intervening. Now, let me ask you one other question, sir, about the nature of Vladimir Putin's actions. If he thinks that Ukraine is being dominated by neo-Nazis and that denazification is necessary, why doesn't he go to the United Nations, provide a range of evidence and ask for broad-ranging support from the international community to intervene? Because if that were happening, it would be concerning. And I'm sure if evidence were provided, other countries would support Vladimir Putin. He could do that without taking military action and without killing hundreds of people.
Vladimir Putin very realistic. That's why never he, never me told that Ukraine under the control of neo-Nazi. No, Ukraine is controlled by United States of America and part of these allies. And United States of America created a repressive regime which used as minor process neo-Nazis for terror against the people. United States and Great Britain support Ukrainian repressive regime exactly as they supported junta in Chile by General Pinochet. And now both United States and Great Britain in shame because support of Pinochet junta. Same United States and Great Britain will be in shame for supporting this neo-Nazi terror in Ukraine.
Sergei Markov, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And Mr. Markov is, of course, correct that many decades ago the Americans did support an anti-democratic regime in Chile. The comparisons between that and Ukraine, well, it's for you to decide how relevant